What's up? This is Cutti, and we're gonna push a little further now. We've done some thumbnails, and you can actually find this original thumbnail on the previous page. So now I'm just gonna go in and start punching it up. But the first thing that I had done was I did what they call a resing up, or the resizing of it. Basically I just take the resolution that was existing from the thumbnail, which is a really small image, and I blew that up so that I have a larger canvas to work on. And now that I'm going to be going in and doing some detail, that extra resolution will come in handy. For the most part, since we've got the established composition, we don't want to do too many heavy tweaks in terms of changing objects or lighting or anything like that. Really, all we want to do is begin to lay in detail and just refine the image that is there already. So in terms of, if you were to shrink this, like the final image, if you were to shrink it down real small and put it next to the original thumbnail, it shouldn't look too different. I mean, it should look cleaner and probably a little bit brighter, more refined, but at that small level it should still look like a pretty close match. Really, I'm using a couple variations of brushes right now. I'm using a hard brush, and I'm just kind of laying in some extra. Now I'm doing a little bit of scatter on the ground, so there's a little more texture there. But I'll jump back and forth and just kind of add highlights here and there, zooming in a bit from time to time. Just, right now punching up a little bit of light on this tree. And the main thing is to just, as I go through, whenever I come across an area that looks a little dull or a little flat, I just start adding a little detail in there. And that's pretty much the process for the overall. I just continue this step, zooming in further or just looking closer at the details and what I want to convey, so that I'm constantly just kind of building up the layers, if you will. The organic stuff is much quicker in my mind and a little easier, just because we don't really have to play with perspectives at all. And that means, you don't have to make up a grid or follow any real rules. With a lot of these organic shots, you can just you can be more loose, and that kind of speeds up the process a bit. I find that doing a lot of these organic things really make for a good warm up. Just like I said, just because there's less of intense thought and problem solving that needs to be done there. It's more along the lines of just, how does the image itself balance and look. So you'll see I'm focusing a little bit on the ground there and just kind of giving some different levels to it so it doesn't just look like one really smooth path. I did want this to look kind of, not quite like a game trail, but more like something that perhaps people have been, walking their carriage and horses down, or something along, an actual man-made trail in the middle of the forest, so that we get this good sight line right through the middle. Another thing that I think I mentioned before is when you're dealing with these things in terms of atmospheric perspective, and that's basically the stuff that is closest to you is the darkest and hardest, and then as it goes further into the distance, it gets softer and lighter, and that's just an effect of the atmosphere that's around it. On a real foggy day, your visibility is very very short, and it's very low. And so then you would have, a big difference in your foreground and background like that. Whereas even on a very sunny, clear day, if you go outside and look, whatever is immediately in front of you is going to be of a fuller contrast and a darker tone, as opposed to something that is deep into the distance. Even if that thing in the distance is generally a darker object, if you will. It's just an atmospheric thing. So that's why as we go deeper into the forest, the trees get lighter and they sort of fade into the background. It's it's a very simple thing to remember, and it will make a world of difference in adding depth, easily and quickly adding depth to your paintings. So about this point, I've decided I'm going to put in some sort of subject matter, and right now I've kind of decided that it's going to be some sort of elk, deer type thing, but I do want to add a bit of fantasy to it all. So I'll be making some slight adjustments and tweaks to them a little bit. I think I knew pretty early on I was going to give them gold antlers, so we'll see that I slowly start to bring in the highlights to pump that up. I did use a particular brush to kind of do the beginning of the fur there, and I did do this subject matter. This character is on its own layer, so that way I can I can completely manipulate it. I can free transform it. I could skew it, as you see right here. I'm going to adjust sizes. I'm going to use a duplicate to kind of help me guide where I want to lay down the shadow. And having it on its own layer gives me so much more flexibility, as you see. And it allows me so that I can be real experimental without having to worry about affecting the painting in the background. Because this is going to be adjusting the composition a little bit by adding a feature, a character into it. But I think it's still all worked out pretty balanced, and I wanted it to kind of seem as if he's kind of come out and you're walking down the path and he's just heard you, so he's looking directly at us as we walk through. Just really punching up some highlights, adding in extra little broken branches and leaves and stuff like that. I'm going to throw some flowers on the ground. Now I'm going to do a little bit of some washing in of some sun rays through the trees. I use a lasso tool with a gradient, and then I do a control Gaussian blur, which is up in the filters. And then from there, I'm just adjusting its opacity, maybe adjusting, do I want it as like a soft light layer or a vivid light layer. I'm in the layer properties, and then erasing the areas that I don't want it to be crossing over. Some of the trees that are up in the front, for example, we want those to still remain dark and still remain bold, and then have the light cut through the trees that are behind them, just to add a little extra depth. Some final little tweaking here and there, and then I'll do some light color adjustments and just kind of bring the whole thing together. And then these final little bits of doing the gold here and kind of making this guy pop. And after that, that's pretty much it. We do real simple color adjustments and some levels, things like that, and then we're good to go. I would say for this painting, I think in total it was about 2 hours or so. I think maybe a little over 2 hours. And the initial thumbnail was an 8-minute. Yeah, I want to say it was an 8-minute thumbnail. So now you'll see me do a little adjustments. I kind of made it adjust the color and finish the framing out there. So I hope you enjoyed this breakdown, and I'll catch you on another one.